Hello and welcome to More Than a Game, a podcast about the A-League, Premier League and more. My name's Tommie Sea, and this week joining me is Jesse and Colby. Boys, fantastic to have you on the pod for this Easter Sunday podcast. How are you this morning, Jesse? Well, this afternoon. I guess we've got different time zones.
Mate, bloody good. Extra hour to sleep in was sensational, always is, and also finally being able to enjoy a decent Liverpool performance was the cherry on top. But there's plenty of other moments last night that we'll tuck into shortly.
Plenty of moments indeed. Colby, mate, how are you this morning? This afternoon, you know what I mean.
Very well, Tommie Sea. Reunited, and it feels so good. It's been so long since we've done a pod together.
I think the last one was, I think that it was lunchtime for me, and because of that, there were aircraft pretty much taking off at regular intervals, which didn't make for great audio quality, I've got to admit, but I think that was the last time we were together on the pod, wasn't it?
I know, just happy to be here.
All right, mate, bumper pod this week, fellas, so we'll get straight into it, shall we? Jesse, what stood out to you this week?
Well, I mean, anything that I had lined up before last night and the West Brom Chelsea game pretty much got smashed to smithereens because, you know, I don't want to twist the dagger into George, the resident Chelsea fan, and I just think the West Brom game was just absolutely ludicrous and ridiculous, and a lot of people were saying it's the reason why they enjoy Premier League and they enjoy watching just football in general. It's for games like that, absolutely absurd. But one of the goals that made my moment of the week was you could have taken the pick out of a lot of them, but the Callum Robinson volley was just absolutely sensational. I could sort of imagine in that moment when I was preparing for the pod, Colby doing a chef's kiss. I didn't even need to put it on the run sheet. I knew that he'd be doing that somewhere. And then a special mention to Alisson's moustache, which really just warmed my soul seeing that moustache this morning.
Alisson, I thought it was Borat in goal for Liverpool.
Great success.
Very nice.
Very good. All right, Colby, mate, what about you? What stood out for you this week?
This week, I've had a bit of an eye on the Sergio Aguero farewell tour. Well, at least the start of it that's sort of been announced this week. I think it sort of all came out officially, and Manchester City confirmed that they're going to have a statue of Sergio Aguero alongside David Silva and Vincent Kompany outside the Etihad. And I just thought that's a brilliant moment, and it just reminded me that the sooner we can get clubs in Australia in the A-League and in the second division, when it eventually arrives, owning their own stadiums and honouring the legends of their clubs outside of the stadiums, the sooner we get that, the better. Because as a Brisbane Roar fan, I remember when Matty Mackay retired and people saying like, "Where's his statue outside of Suncorp?" You've got Wally Lewis out there, and you've got the immortals from like the Queensland State of Origin teams and murals and things like that. But where's Matty Mackay out here? Come on, where's Thomas Broich? And the sooner we can get our own stadiums and start honouring our club legends, the better.
Just a question, boys.
We've just got Puskás hiding away in the MCG car park.
You have to really seek Puskás out, hey?
Just in some bush somewhere. I was just going to say,
boys.
What
I call him Puskás, eh?
Puskás. Jeez. Just thoughts on the Aguero statue. I mean, what do you got to do to get a stand named after you? I mean, if not the stand, what about an aisle or an Aguero? What do you think?
Jesse in fine form already. If there was one thing that stood out to me about that, it was that it was just another reminder that Manchester City's history started in 2010. So I think everyone can get on board with an Aguero statue.
Yeah, there was a lot of cheeky comments like that on social media, but that's the sort of second part. The second main phase of Manchester City's history. And the scary thing is now, like with those guys retiring, fans of other clubs sort of think to themselves, "Oh, whew, thank goodness for that." But actually, like you just see them going to another level, like with the Haalands and whoever else they're thinking about bringing in. It's just scary to think how good that club can be.
Well, they're just going to go to playing a false nine every week, and we've seen how that goes for Pep.
It's true.
All right, Jesse, what haven't you liked this week?
I think everything in the own goal category on the flip side of the West Brom performance had to go to Chelsea last night. It was just, I don't even know where to start, but I will just zone in a couple of things. I mean, it all sort of reverberates around Thiago Silva and that second yellow, obviously, the damage that there was just, you couldn't imagine how catastrophic it was going to be after that. So that's a pretty obvious own goal, but a special mention to Olivia Bazaglo, who's a FPL and also a Premier League correspondent, who tweeted just before the game, Thiago Silva is back in the side. It's a big positive. Hey, remember when everyone wrote him off when he made that mistake against West Brom at the Hawthorns? That was funny. And that was quickly picked up by Twitter and put in the images that precede unfortunate events. So I thought that was definitely worth a mention. That's one of those moments where you just leave Twitter, leave the phone, just go do something else for a few days, because you're going to come back and it's just going to be going absolutely mental.
RIP her mentions.
RIP, yeah.
And Colby, what about you? What was your own goal for this week?
I'm going to channel my inner Damo this week, boys, and I'm going to take us to Africa. Take us around the world as Damo likes to do for his moments of the week and own goals. And I'm going to Africa for the African Nations Cup. They had some qualifiers over the international break, and this own goal goes to the Cameroonian Federation, who left Eric Choupo-Moting out of the squad, out of the Cameroonian squad for those qualifiers. Not because they didn't want to pick him, but because they sent the email call up to themselves rather than to the player. So my own goal, the Cameroonian Federation. And it's a they look like they needed him too, because I checked out the results, and they lost to the island country Cape Verde, which I've never heard of. I'm sorry to all of our listeners from Cape Verde. Lost 3-1 to them and drew with Rwanda 0-0. So it looks like they could have used some of Choupo-Moting's rare goals.
It's a Portuguese colony, Cape Verde. But Choupo-Moting, is that one of those examples where the club's messaged him on iMessage and he hasn't had iMessage turned on? So there's a real mix up there. It's like, mate, turn your iMessage on. You've been selected for the country.
It's one of those, like we were talking about Seb Allaire, I think the other week, not getting picked for Ajax because the club made some mistake as well. So, and the other thing about this, it's not an own goal, but Choupo-Moting, how wild is this man's career? Like, went from Stoke to PSG to Bayern. Like, the man's just a salmon. He's just like, he's swimming upstream.
He's the Roberto Martinez of players.
Yeah.
Just keeps failing up.
Absolutely. And then, like, it's not as if he's been like, banging the door down or anything. I looked at his stats. He played 30 games for Stoke, 5 goals, 5 assists, then goes to PSG, 31 games over 2 seasons for PSG, 6 goals, 1 assist. Then gets a move to Bayern, and he's played 17 games and got 1 goal, 0 assists for Bayern. So, get yourself an agent. Get yourself an agent like Choupo-Moting.
Those are all Lord Benton areas.
Yeah.
All right, boys. Before we get into this week's A-League, though, a few points of news from the week, though. First up, the Women's World Cup 2023 cities or host cities were announced. Boys, any major takeaways from you about that? Things you liked, things you didn't like? Colby?
Gosford stiffed.
I was a bit surprised with the New Zealand stadiums, with Hamilton getting the nod over Christchurch. I know Christchurch has been a bit lean with the capacity after the earthquakes. We still haven't built the proper replacement stadium. We've had a sort of a makeshift stadium. So maybe that was what came into it, because Dunedin, which has a new stadium in the south of the South Island, is going to be one of the host cities. That's a great stadium for football, actually. I'm excited to see some games there.
New Zealand is probably flush with fantastic rectangular stadiums. Am I right?
Well, the Dunedin Stadium, which was built kind of just after I finished studying, so it's been there for about 10 years or so, that is a cracking ground, and it's also got a roof and glass to allow the light come through. That's a great rectangular stadium, and the acoustics is meant to be sensational. But the other grounds around the country has actually been the contrary. We've had to have a lot of makeshift half cricket, half rugby stadiums, which is then used for football. So unfortunately, I've grown up watching a lot of football and rugby in stadiums which are round, and I'm never a fan of that. So maybe the Hamilton Stadium is a good rectangular stadium, so that might have been the reason why it got the tick. But yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing some really, really good football across the two countries, because some of these stadiums are going to be cracking venues, particularly the one that it's just down the road from all of us at Amy Park. Still with us, Tommie?
Tommie, you still there, mate?
Yeah, fair enough. It surprises me that there's so many round venues in New Zealand. I mean, obviously, New Zealand is they're a cricket playing nation. Fucking hell. Can you hear me?
Yeah, got you, mate. You're just a little bit
Dropped
delayed, but with the magic of editing, I'm sure we can smooth this over.
Yeah.
I was just saying, I'm surprised there are so many round pitches in New Zealand, though. I mean, it's a rugby mad country, so I would have thought there would have been heaps of rectangular pitches, and they would have been sort of the dominant thing. But alas, it's just not to be. One other thing, I guess there were a couple of things that stood out. Tasmania obviously missed out again. Not sure that they really had a rectangular pitch which was ready to go. And also in New Zealand for their announcement utilised Indigenous city names for alongside all of their I guess Anglo names as well, which that caught the attention of many of an Australian as well, and everyone went, well, why didn't we do that?
I saw Vince Rugari's tweet about this, because he was one of the prominent people on soccer Twitter that called this out. And there was somebody that wrote back to him, I think another journo. I don't have the tweet in front of me, but they mentioned something which was that the Indigenous language used in the New Zealand names is an official language of New Zealand. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jesse, but not in Australia. And I guess that's really the thing that speaks to the state of affairs in Australia versus New Zealand more than anything. But that might be why FIFA chose to utilise that in the announcement. And they just looked, and it wasn't an official language listed for Australia, so they didn't use it.
Just went straight to the Wikipedia article. Or,
yeah,
no, just English. Okay, yeah, we'll just use
no,
English. Okay, no worries.
Yeah.
And if there's one final thing that I wanted to throw out about this was I did see someone suggest on Twitter that instead of calling it the Women's World Cup 2023, we should just call it the World Cup in 2023, which I thought was a very small but decent
for inclusivity. So. Yeah. I think
exactly
that kind of thing is coming, isn't it? Yeah.
There's
like we wonder why we've been calling it, the Women's World Cup and not calling it the Men's World Cup, et cetera, for all this time. So yeah, small
they're
things
not
like that
at the same time.
Yeah. There can't be any confusion. Like the date is the thing that differentiates them, not the gender of player.
Exactly. All right, a few more things before we get into the A-League. The Ireland circus appears to be winding up this week. Minarola he's gone into overdrive. We saw him. I think he popped up in Madrid and then in England as well. Boys, what do you make of this? Is this going to be sort of like the decision in the NBA a few years ago with sorry, I forget his name, but the decision or like Anton Griezmann as well?
Yeah, I thought you were going to say
Griezmann. You were referring to Griezmann,
yeah.
No, it was LeBron. It was LeBron where he and like two other guys were just like, nah, like we just want to win rings, so we're going to go to Miami, and all three of us, like it was like the three biggest players at the same time. Yeah. Where's Damo when I need to talk American sport?
Yeah. With the Haaland thing, I just think that this is just the beginning. I mean, like there's absolutely no rush for anything on the Dortmund side to be moving. They've still got plenty of business to do, and they've got the Champions League coming up, and there's no incentive for them to get started. But they'll be they're in a great position, Dortmund. I mean, they can make an absolute fortune off this. And Riola's some of his comments, I was listening to another podcast that was talking about Riola, like just specifically about him. And one of his comments was with Haaland is that he actually thinks that maybe he could have skipped Dortmund and gone to a bigger club straight away, which obviously, the benefit of hindsight. But he obviously as his agent, he was confident that maybe he was actually ready, didn't realize, but he was actually ready to skip that step and go straight to a Real Madrid or Barcelona. So with those comments kind of circulating at the moment, it just adds fuel to the fire as to where he's going to go. And it also just means that Dortmund will be resigned to losing him. So it's just about how much are they going to get? I mean, they could buy insane amount of talent with the money they're going to get from Haaland.
Put some respect on Dortmund, Raiola. And I'll tell you how much they're going to get. They're going to get 150 million euros because that's the price that Dortmund have set on him. And Dortmund aren't just going to roll over either. Look at what they did last summer with Jadon Sancho. They held firm on that, and United were buzzing around and they wanted to get a better price, and Dortmund were just like, no, this is the price we're selling him for, and you can meet it and take the player or not. So it looks like they've signalled that intention again with Haaland nice and early. 150 million euro, I believe, is the price they've set on him. But I think he'll be a Dortmund player next season.
Very interesting. Big call, Colby. All right. One final thing is A-League sensation Alou Kuol. He's already been linked with a big move away from the A-League, off to Germany, possibly playing alongside Ireland, which would just sort of blow the mind a little bit. Boys, do you think it's a good move for Alou Kuol to go to Stuttgart at the end of the season? Jesse?
Well, who was it? I think it was you, Cole, or somebody was mentioning that, there could be a first 11 of players that went to Germany and came back, and maybe even a coffee table book that we could create and just have a quick read on all the players that sort of did the loop and came back to the A-League. We don't want that, of course. We want them to be a success. So I would like to think that this would be a success. But I mean, we've seen on the New Zealand side of things, Sarpreet Singh go over there and actually stay there. And actually, I mean, obviously not stay in the first 11, but stay in the Bayern system. So he's obviously changed where he's playing now. But I guess the point remains that he hasn't left the where he headed to. He stayed in Germany and stayed playing football. So could Cole do it? He's still so young.
How long has Sarpreet Singh been overseas for? It's only been 12 months, hasn't it?
Oh, it's been longer than that, surely. It's coming up to 2 years. 2 years?
Yeah, all right.
Oh yeah, that's right, Jesse. What you were saying before, if he goes after like half a season of being decent, or a full season, it will be in the end of being decent in the A-League. Yeah, he'll be the starting striker in my transferred before they were ready 11, and left wing obviously will be Arzani, and we can talk about the rest of the 11 at a future time. But geez, come on, mate, you're going to go in underdone, and sit on a bench at some club. I'd love him to go and succeed, and players should go and test themselves. But I don't know. I really think, a club like Stuttgart, who knows, maybe he would be getting minutes off the bench or starting, and you never know who's going to make the step up well. But it just, at this time, it just doesn't, it feels early. It feels really early.
Whereas, you know what this reminds me of? This reminds me of about 18 months ago when we were talking about Haaland going from RB Salzburg to Dortmund and saying, oh, yeah, he really needs that extra step. And I think in 12 months' time, you never know, we could be talking about Alou Kuol and saying he didn't need to go to Real Madrid via Stuttgart. He could have gone straight there.
Yeah, you heard it here first, listeners. He's going straight to Real Madrid.
Anything's possible.
All right, let's move on to some A-League, though. First up, the good teams Melbourne derby, Western United versus Melbourne City, opened up round 14 in the A-League at Amy Park. Goals from ex-City prospect Lockie Wales and Bessar Brusha gave Western United a really good comeback win. Boys, what was the turning point for Western United though?
Tommie's Lockie Wales.
The turning point was City missing about 3 or 4 chances. Naboo should have had 2 of his own. I think Noon could have had another goal. They went up early and they were throwing everything, but I thought Melbourne City were a bit wasteful. I mean, credit to the Woo. They still had to score their 2 goals and turn it around. But I think that the turning point really was City just being wasteful in front of goal.
Quite a contrast in styles as well, because I mean, City just love to keep the ball on the ground and finesse their way through, and the Woo just seem to have this drive or this gear that they go into when they just decide that they're like, okay, well, we're not going to go through them, so we're just going to hit it down the wing and cross it in, and they just seem to just get like these really sort of workingman-like goals. That like the goal that Lockie Wales scored was just endeavour, getting it in, crossing it in, header across the face of goal, and then he tapped it in with his head as well. So it was just, but that last goal from this is where they have that little bit of like cherry on top with Diamante with that unbelievable pass out to Bez.
It's the Diamante diagonal.
Diamante diagonal. Simply the Bez. How about that finish, lads?
Mamma mia.
Boys, for me, I'm going to say that the catalyst for Western United getting back into the game was actually Diamante coming on, because he comes on in the 57th minute, and then the 60th minute they equalise through Lachie Wales, as we said, but then another 5 minutes later, Diamante, Wales, and Barisha all combine, and that goal for me, that the winner for Western United, that was up there, I thought, with that Wellington goal from I think 2 weeks ago in terms of fantastic counter-attacking football. It was an absolute peach of a goal from the pass, Lachie Wales just doing something simple, and Besart Barisha with one, a great touch to bring down the ball, and then two, just a fantastic finish as well. It was
we could eulogize that pass all day, but I think the thing I love about it the most is that I think sometimes in football, when players get so technical, they don't just hit it first time. They sort of like, they love to take a touch and get into their patterns, and sometimes that's fine. But sometimes on the counter attack, we saw this a month or two ago when Shaqiri did an early ball to Salah, and Salah tapped it I think in the West Ham game. It was just because he took it first time. Because he took it first time, that's what made the goal. And I think it was a similar thing here. Like, I just love the vision, but I also love the fact that he didn't muck around, and he just played what was in front of him. So it was a really natural kind of piece of play by Diamante.
It was a bit of an improvised finish by Bez, because the ball sort of popped up to him in the box, and it popped up, and then he's done the little pirouette and sold the defender as if he was going to go across the face of goal, and then at the last minute just shifts his body and slots it on the other side. It was just beautiful play, but yeah, it was slightly improvised and not in the sort of his standard pattern of play, as Tommie was saying.
And you mentioned about simplicity, Jesse. I thought Lachie Wales has actually done very well there. Like, he hasn't done heaps, but I think Lachie Wales is a player that's been guilty in the past of trying to overplay things and dribbling when he probably should just maybe square a ball or put in an early cross. And I think Lachie Wales is probably going to get a little bit of not going to necessarily get the props for keeping things simple in that move as well. And let's face it, Lachie Wales doesn't get a lot of praise, so credit where credit's due for once, I think.
Well, I'm going to take credit for that goal, because I trashed Lachie Wales 2 weeks ago on the pod, saying that he'd scored 3 goals in close to like 4,000 minutes of football or something like that. But now he's got 4 goals, so I mean, good on him. This could be the start of something great.
That's the thing, when you guys aren't on the same pod, there's no one to defend Lachie Wales. So,
yeah, I know.
Welcome back, Tommie.
The Lachie Wales bloodbath.
Here's your right of reply, Tommie. The floor's yours.
It was a pretty disappointing result, though, for Melbourne City. It was an opportunity for them to not quite go top, but they would have been able to jump up into at least second. So pretty disappointing result for them after they'd won 6 on the bounce, which was A-League top in terms of form. But the other team that had also won 6 on the bounce was Adelaide, and they travelled to Central Coast. Was what was really the top of the table team versus one of the form teams in the league. And those who tuned in, I've got to say, I reckon they witnessed a really fun game of football between two teams in great form. And for those who remember early back in the season, not that long ago, but this was a far better game than the last time these two teams met. Remember that absolute shitstorm of a game where Adelaide just jagged 3 shitty penalties, and they were 3 actual dodgy penalties, not Sydney dodgy penalties for those that tuned in last week. But boys, what was your favourite moment of this game? And there were many moments. Jesse?
It had to be Quoll running into the crowd and just the crowd going absolutely nuts. Yeah, that was pretty.
And he's done the hooking into my veins in the end as well.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like the Simpsons and the A-League, like it's that handshake emoji, really, isn't it? Like they just go partner in hand. So many crossovers, but I think it was a sensational moment because obviously at that point the Mariners were actually probably pretty content in getting back into the game and squaring the game. So that was just an absolute cherry on top. And the forgotten player there, I think it was Nisbet, wasn't it, that ran to the byline and just never gave up. to quote the commentator at the end, he said that they just won't back down, the Mariners. It's like a good Tom Petty song. Yeah, that was a great example of he just wanted it more. And I thought that, it's always great to see when attacking players just go right to the byline and just don't give up. The goalkeeper, there's always an error in a goalkeeper if they just keep going like that. So good on them.
I'm glad you brought up Josh Nisbet, because I think it was Harps who was on commentary for this one. He called Josh Nisbet the work experience kid, which given that he's been one of the best players, I think, for the Mariners this season, I think that is a massive undersell of how good Nisbet has been. Maybe that's why he's so hungry. He's looking for a full-time gig at the academy or on the squad.
The man doesn't get paid.
But I thought that was massively disrespectful to Josh Nisbet, because I think he's been fantastic, and even not just considering height, I think he's been fantastic. Full stop.
Yeah, and Jesse was talking about Nisbet and not giving up, but I think that was yes, Nisbet deserves a lot of the credit, particularly for that winning goal, but the whole the resilience of the whole team and the belief of the Mariners. So they had a pen saved. Matt Simon had a goal that was offside. They had two goals, that were offside. One cleared off the line, and this is before Adelaide went ahead. And they go behind to Adelaide, who were themselves on like a 6-match or something winning streak. And the Mariners were already without a win in 3 games, and the heat had come off Kuala a little bit. And then to turn it around like that in the last 20 minutes, the belief of that team is just absolutely incredible.
Sorry, Colby, my 2 was that they had 2 penalties saved. So
2 pens saved, yeah.
Joe Gauci, I think he saved like 3 penalties now for Adelaide. I think he saved one last week or 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago or something, which is a pretty incredible run for a goalkeeper that's still only played less than 10 games, I think, in the league. He's almost saved more penalties than games played.
Tommy, I believe the commentator referred to him as Gauci the Great.
Sorry, Colby. So to revert back to your point though, you're right. Like this Mariners team, they are very resilient, and there's lots of quality, and we can see that like this is a very different Mariners team to what we've been seeing over the last few years. Do you think this is the moment where the Mariners start to think, okay, can we actually win this thing, as in win the league?
Well, I mean, they've shown that they can beat anyone on their day. And, I mean, in the A-League, especially when it comes to finals, that's what you need to do. You need to be able to dig in and get a win. So, yes, I don't see why not.
Jesse?
I think everyone's just waiting for this Cinderella story to go off track. But they just won't. They won't back down, again, to use that phrase. The thing I find impressive about this is that, we can't gloss over the fact that they were 1-0 down. And just going on to what Colby said there, is like, if you want to win in the finals and you want to go, you want to go all the way, you have to find a way to win, even when you're down. And they were 1-0 down, and they turned it around. I think we haven't even mentioned Bozanic, and his.
That was next on my list, Jesse. But go on.
That was the contribution, obviously, that started the turnaround, and it was a real kind of just following on your comments before, Colby, about the way they were playing and their attitude. Like, I think one of the things I really liked about it is that they'd sort of had a counter attack just before that goal, and it fizzed out. But there was still so many Mariners forward that they just kept throwing people forward, and that was the reward. The defense hadn't set, and Bozanic found a little bit of space and scored. So it was positive football. So again, like, they were pushing for the equalizer, but it just sort of embodied the way that the Mariners are playing at the moment. There's a lot of confidence.
And for Bozanic to come in as well, Jesse, like I remember in the preseason when we were all previewing the Mariners in our season preview, we was like, okay, Bozanic is, their only real signing of note that they've got in. But what's he going to do? Like, he's not going to really move the needle for the Mariners. They're pretty much an unchanged lineup from the one that either won the wooden spoon or finished second bottom wherever they did the season before and years before that. So, but he's come back to the club. He's got the armband on. He's been an absolute rock for them in midfield, and now he's just coming up with important goals. Incredible. And
missing penalties as well, but we'll miss that part out.
But then to come back from that as well, because some players, if they have a pen saved, the head would drop, and he's had a pen saved, and and gone on to score quite a good little goal and lead his team to a comeback. So there's something in that.
You're not wrong though, but like if there was one, we're talking about sort of where we were looking at the Mariners at the beginning of the season. I remember thinking, oh geez, they've lost Ziggy Gordon. He was really good for them, and he was a good big leader as well. But like Bozanic has replaced Gordon as sort of the on-field leader, and I mean they haven't missed Gordon on the pitch either. So it's been a delight to watch them actually be good this season. And I think everyone's just enjoying the Mariners sort of charge up the table at everyone else's expense. Was anything else from this game before we move on though? Okay, very good. What was it? I can't remember which day it was, but McBulls hosted Perth at Campbelltown. MacArthur continued to surprise as a double from Matt Derbyshire saw them grab all 3 points against a largely toothless Perth Glory side. The result sees the McBulls jump up to second. Boys, when will Matt Derbyshire finally get some love on More Than a Game?
Well, he gets love from Jesse and I every week.
I always believed in Matt Derbyshire. I actually, to be honest, I haven't had much of an opinion on him. I mean, I think I've managed to just miss the weeks where Damo's absolutely ripped him to shreds. So
every time I'm on the pod with Damo, I always ask him this question, Tommy. I'm just like, I always ask him, how many goals is it going to take for you to put some respect on Derbyshire's name? And Damo told me last time we were on the pod that Derbyshire is just his non-boy. We don't know what that's like, what a better name for that is, but no matter how good Derbyshire is, Damo's just never going to be on board.
It's like the football equivalent of I remember I had this bloke at school who was of like Indian background, and you talk about any Australian cricketer and he'd just say, oh yeah, Don Bradman, yeah, 452 not out, all edges. And it's like the equivalent of that, just saying like every Derbyshire goal is just a tap in, or it's just some like arsey goal, and none of them have been any good, and he's still a rubbish player even though he's second top in the Golden Boot standings at the moment.
Stats don't lie.
No, they don't. But like two things I guess stood out for me in this game. One, Fornaroli just couldn't get into the game, and although Castro and Armiento I thought were Perth's probably best players, Perth really they didn't really offer a huge amount, and I think the season's at a bit of a crossroads for Perth, because I think probably a month ago, everyone thought, oh yeah, Perth, they're looking good for the top six, and they had a whole bunch of games to catch up on, but they've just kind of fallen in a heap in the last half dozen games. They've won one in the last 5 games, which would be really disappointing, I think, for Perth. Excuse me. The other thing that stood out for me was the back three for MacArthur. I thought they all had a really good performance. Was it Jovanovic, Milligan, and now the third one's escaping me. But I thought the 3 of them were very good defensively, but also in particular, I thought all 3 were very good playing the ball out of defence. They seemed to just cut through the Perth press and really like it wasn't there, and maybe that's more indicative of how bad the Perth press was. But I thought that that was something that stood out particularly for me. So McBulls are up to second now, which I've got to admit I wasn't predicting that they would be second at this point of the season. So really positive signs, I guess, for Ante Milicic and the McBulls as we enter, I guess, the second half of the season. Was anything else that you boys wanted to mention for this one?
Just the abbreviation in the name MacPer. It kind of sounds like your laptop, Tommy, when you get Football Manager loaded up. get that caller fan going. Yeah, just thought you'd throw that one in there.
Where I am, it's quite hot, right? And we've got like some outside TV set up.
Sauna.
The other day, some friends and I were watching the Premier League or the A-League outside in the morning, and it was getting so hot that like my laptop was battling with the heat to the point where I had to rest it on like a couple of bottles of frozen water, though we'd got it out of the freezer. So you can just imagine how much the old MacBook struggles with Football Manager in this heat.
Oh, absolutely.
MacBook, MacBulls both struggle in the heat.
Yeah.
Both benefiting from the move to winter.
Both love a bell.
Yeah. Yes. All right. One final A-League game to review, and that's Brisbane versus Western Sydney. A 1-1 draw in the single Saturday fixture. This one in Brisbane. Boys, this game wasn't meant to go ahead because of the Brisbane COVID lockdown, and I've got to say, some would probably say that it shouldn't have gone ahead. Fair comment, Colby?
Yeah, correct. I would have been happy for this one to be postponed. Western Sydney were in some pretty good form, and when that Kwame Yeboah goal went in, it was all Western Sydney, and I thought they were going to run riot, especially because Brisbane had Aldred and Gillespie out with injury and suspension. I thought, oh gee, this is going to be ugly. But then Brisbane sort of got back into it, and particularly through Jowick and Riku Denzaki, and I thought, okay, we could be on here. But then it just fizzled after that, and yeah, without a focal point in Scotty Mack, he came back for the club this week, and that was an encouraging return. But previously, in the 8 games that we haven't had a win without him in the team, we just didn't have that outlet going forward. And even though Brisbane, it was all Brisbane in the sort of second half in particular of this game, it was just never going to go anywhere, and it turned into a bit of a snore fest.
Yeah, disappointing, I guess, that it was the single Saturday game for a lot of people. So, if they weren't out visiting family in the regions or whatever, this was the A-League game for them to watch. So,
can we just get a shout out to one of the wonders of the world though on that performance, Champ Nessie? Surely he's a lock to go into Wanderers folklore. Some absolutely sensational moments from him. I know that'll just go straight to the highlight reel, but he looked he looked
he was electric. And
that was a really nice. That first goal was mostly him. I mean, it was a lovely finish, but mostly him. Yeah.
Pues is that Champness got to be one of the first names on the sheet now for Brisbane Roar moving forward?
Got to be. He was Warren Moon often plays him off the bench, but when he's in form like this, you got to get him on there. And this is the thing that Damo's been saying about the Raw and about Warren Moon, the way Warren Moon manages. Damo's sort of not convinced that Warren Moon is necessarily playing the boys who are in form. And I'm not sure he is either. And I'm not sure that Warren Moon necessarily knows whether Jowick's going to sort of come off the bench and run at tired defences, or he's going to start because he's in great form. And I just think that's one thing that needs to be sorted out, and we need to get into some kind of a rhythm.
Fair enough. Pretty decent shout there that really, in either way, whether he's coming off the bench or he's starting, I think it's either way, it's going to be good for Brisbane. I'm
going to go with Champ Nessie from now on, Jesse, though.
100%.
Alrighty, boys. Anything else before we move on to the Big Blue? Alrighty. Look, plenty of A-League still to come this round. We're not going to preview all of them, despite what I might have said in the run sheet, boys. We'll just preview quickly the Big Blue though. Obviously, Melbourne Victory rooted to the bottom of the table. Sydney in sixth place with 2 wins from their last 5. Boys, can you see anything other than a Sydney victory here?
No.
Oh.
I mean, unless something. I mean, we've seen some strange results already this weekend in different leagues, but I can't see it. I mean, yeah.
Give us a score prediction then, boys. Jesse, you first.
2-0 to Sydney.
Colby?
3-1 Sydney for me.
I'm going to go 4-0 to Sydney.
Oh.
All right, boys.
The only thing against Sydney. Sorry, Tommy. The only thing in Melbourne Victory's favour and going against Sydney is they've just been a bit wasteful in front of goals themselves, and the likes of Costa Barbarouses and Trent Bahagia have not been quite the outlets for goals that we thought they were going to be for Sydney, and I don't think the club were expecting Bobo to carry too much goal scoring weight when bringing him back. So I'm just not sure where all of their goals are coming from. I think they're going to score goals because it's Melbourne Victory and they've just been shipping goals for fun. But and maybe this will be the game that the confidence booster that some of those Sydney players need. But that would be my only caveat for a Sydney running wild with this one.
It doesn't really matter what Barbarouses and Bahadja do when Babo scores 4 goals. So there you go. All right, boys. A-League Survivor tipping continues to go on. I think we're into round 7 now, which is a lot longer than the first version went for. Matt Olsen and HSN continue to duke it out. Matt Olsen jumped out to an early lead this time around, and really with both players selecting two of the same side in a couple of the matches, it means that this one comes down to who wins in Melbourne City versus Wellington and Western Sydney versus Central Coast. So a little bit extra riding on those 2 matches there. If there's a draw in both of those matches, though, obviously it means Matt Olsen, he takes out the prize, though. So good luck to HSN and Matt Olsen, and we'll be able to talk about this more next week. Hopefully we've got a result. Please have a result. All right, boys, next on to the Premier League, though. Okay, so look, the big match of the round really was, I guess, Leicester versus Manchester City, another top-of-the-table clash, but really it was disappointing in really every way. The first half was a real arm wrestle, City just choking the life out of the game as Leicester were happy to sit deep and try to replicate their early season 5-2 win from back in September. But look, it wasn't nearly as exciting as that game back in September. In the first half, there were offside goals or disallowed goals for both sides, and really it looked like still City were going to take this out. And it was. To borrow your turn of phrase, Colby and Jesse, before the pod, this was really business as usual still for City, with them scoring 2 goals in the second half. Both the catalyst for both goals really was Kevin De Bruyne with the pre-assist before Mahrez, Rodri and Bendy combined for Bendy to score the first one, and then another pre-assist for Kevin De Bruyne to set up the goal as well there.
Can we make pre-assist not a thing? It's just like, I just don't like that word. That's just a personal thing.
Pre-assist or the pre-assist?
Pre-assist.
What
do you
sound
think right?
Do you prefer the assist to the assist?
Yeah, assist for the assist. It's a bit harder to say, but it doesn't sound like pre-cum.
Yeah. Nothing to add here, boys.
I've got nothing. Wow.
Wow. As you were.
So what game were we talking about again?
Only the match of the round, Leicester versus Man City.
Oh, wait, are we talking about West Brom already?
Yeah, I think so. Boys, Chelsea versus West Brom, the Chewbacca game, pretty batshit crazy game at Stamford Bridge. I got to admit, when I saw Chelsea went up 1-0 after 27 minutes, I thought this game was done. And I was pretty much just saying to the people I was watching the games with, saying, look, this is the problem with the Premier League this season. You've got huge disparity between the teams, and really they're not particularly entertaining games. And then literally 60 seconds later, Thiago Silva got sent off and the game just turned on its head completely. And it turned into an A-League game, which I think is probably the biggest possible compliment to the A-League, I think, at the moment. How watchable it is. But 5 goals for West Brom, only 1 returned after the red card from Chelsea, leaving it 5-2. And I'm still dizzy. But the last hour of this game was absolutely wild, wasn't it, boys?
Crazy. Absolutely crazy. And I've got a couple of stats here. I mean, firstly, you would have thought that Chelsea would have been able to keep it tight, even though they went down to 10 men. Lads, it's West Brom. Come on. But Tuchel got big Sam'd in a big way. And Chelsea have conceded 32% of West Brom's total season goals. West Brom have got to Chelsea, and they scored 25% of those in this match tonight. So come on, lads. What are you doing?
There's another stat, though, that separate to that was Chelsea hadn't conceded other than 2 goals in the last 10 or something games, and they conceded 5 against West Brom in 1 game. Absolutely absurd, whichever way you look at it.
I'll elaborate upon some of those stats there. So Chelsea had conceded 0 goals in their last 7 games in all competitions. Had to go back to the game against Southampton for the last goal that they conceded. Obviously, they scored 5 in this game though, which obviously that's a pretty big anomaly. It means that Chelsea have conceded 8 goals against Chelsea this season. Chelsea have conceded 8 goals against West Brom this season, which just boggles the mind. And West Brom had also scored 1 goal in their last 5 games as well. So, as George said, how are these fuckers last?
I mean, like, everyone's been Big Sam before, and there's always a chance of a Big Sam in at any moment. But the thing I don't get about this game is that, if anything, Tuchel actually kind of went rogue Pep on this, and he overcomplicated things because a lot of his selections were to do with these players playing big minutes in international breaks. So he took out Rudiger, who's been
one of their best,
and he's particularly good when they are opened up, which it doesn't happen very often, but when they are opened up, he's the last man there, making the blocks, making the saves, which is, I think, what they wanted to get from Silva yesterday. But as soon as he got red carded, like, there was just, wow, like the defense just got completely opened up. And like my own fantasy team was the roller coaster journey that everyone needed. I had Alonso as captain, and no, I actually I regret nothing, because it started off with him. It started off with him with a sensational free kick. Didn't get the goal, but he got the assist, fantasy assist with Pulisic scoring. And you're like, oh, we're on here. We're going to get a clean sheet and an assist. It's going to be an absolute haul. Then Silva gets red carded. I'm like, this is not good. And then I'm just watching like some absolutely schoolboy defending, and then it never got better for Chelsea. And Alonso, just going back to Alonso, he just summed it all up. I mean, he looked like he was going to get 5 goals in the first half, and then after Silva got sent off, he was just ripped open on that left or right flank. And just look, they always looked vulnerable. And every time West Brom went forward, Chelsea looked like they were going to concede. And that really, they brought on Mount to try and bring that to help Kovacic in the midfield, but they just couldn't get out. Even Kovacic was making mistakes near the end of the game, and giving the ball
green
away.
and yellow kit, Jesse, the West Brom kit. I squinted at one point, and I thought I was watching Prime Brazil, the way they were swaggering around.
That Robinson goal, though, was just absolutely sensational. Like,
all of the goals, every goal,
yeah,
each of the 5 goals were just insane. So Pereira, you had the looped finish and then a really composed one. Callum Robinson, you had that delicious volley that was your moment of the week, Jesse, and the little dink as well. And some stats on him. He scored 5 out of 5 of his league goals against Chelsea, and he's the first player in the Premier League era to score at least 2 goals home and away against Chelsea, for 2 delicious finishes. And then that team goal that they were just, I don't have the stat in front of me for who finished that one, but my God, was it Robinson again? Yeah.
Or was it Daniel?
Oh, that was that. Yeah, Daniel. Yeah. Oh my God, that goal was just
beautiful.
I've got in my notes that reminded me of Wellington or Western United in the A-League with their recent counter-attacking efforts as well. So the ultimate compliment, really.
This was a real A-League game.
Yeah, it really was. And Jesse, you mentioned about Fantasy Premier League as well. If there was one small thing that Fantasy Premier League players will have noticed, it was that Sam Johnson, he got the assist for I think it was Pereira's first goal, which, yeah. I mean, everyone loves to see it when a goalkeeper gets an assist in FPL. It's just tickles the senses,
especially when nobody owns the guy as well.
Yeah.
Except one bloke probably who's like triple captained him or something like that.
Yep.
Yep.
Boys, pretty wild game, and it was the match of the round. It was far more exciting than I think anyone could have possibly predicted.
I'm glad we opened with that.
Yeah. Me too.
Yeah. The magic of editing.
Also, we had in one. The other match that was played last night was Leeds hosted Sheffield United in the the Yorkshire derby. Another close game, but ultimately another loss for Sheffield United as they grimly stayed in the match. But another match that once again they just couldn't find the quality to stay in the match on the scoreboard. Though I thought this pretty much summed up Sheffield United's season. They were good for big chunks of the game, but ultimately if you don't score goals, you're just not going to win or draw football matches, unfortunately. Was anything else particularly you want to add about this game? Because I don't really want to say much about it.
Just
actually, sorry. I've got two
Leeds.
stats. I've got two stats that I want to mention about this game. The first one was Ben Osborne. He scored for Sheffield United. He broke a 46-game goalless streak since he last scored. That last goal was against Leeds United in January 19. Thought I liked that one. And the other one was Phil Jagielka. He also scored. Scored an own goal, though. It was his third own goal against Leeds United in his career. I mean, some people are just happy to score it all. Some people are just happy to score 3 goals, but somehow Jagielka has managed to score 3 own goals, all against Leeds in his career. So, Phil was the guy. But
yeah, it was to be expected. I mean, I think watching the first half, at least, Leeds were all over them, and I think that you wouldn't have been surprised if they were up to 2-3-0 by half time. They didn't put away all the chances they had. Dallas had plenty of opportunities in that game. But that goal just before half time for Sheffield United really changed the tide for a while. So it's good to see them showing some fight. I'm sure Damo would be pleased about that. But yeah, they ended up just getting sort of overwhelmed in the end.
I thought this was going to be a bit of a cricket score with Chris Wilder gone, and really they've got nothing to play for. But yeah, they did show plenty of pride and they stayed into the game, which surprised me, but ultimately didn't surprise me that they didn't win it or draw. So there you go. Boys, one final game from last night, though, which was Arsenal hosting Liverpool at the Emirates. 2 Liverpool fans, Jesse, Colby, what did you make of the match?
There you go first, Colbs.
Well, I mean, Liverpool, I think I saw a stat that we can no longer mathematically win the league. So, I mean, that's a bit disappointing. But, West Brom did us some favours by smashing Chelsea. And so now we're sitting 5th, 2 points off them in 4th. But, I mean, Jota, it's all about Diego. The man's the Portuguese Timmy Cahill. Tell you what, the way he gets up into the air, wins those headers. How does he do it?
Yeah, the Portuguese shirt's in the background. Nobody can see it, but it's there for.
Oh, we
for
can't
Jota.
see it.
It's Jota's day. That guy is just absolutely on fire, and I think the thing that impresses me the most about Jota is this injury that happened in between. So he was looking so good before his injury, and then he was out for a few months, which obviously we really missed him. But it's so unusual for a player that's on a hot streak going into an injury to have an injury and then just to come back and just pick up where they left off, and that's what he's done. And if anything, it's like he was never gone, because his performances for Portugal in the international break and last night, I mean, everything from the international break suggested that he was going to be a bit of a weapon against Arsenal. But then he starts on the bench, doesn't matter, comes on like the 59th minute and scores 2 goals before the end of the game. So it's just his positioning that impresses me. He always pops up in the right place, and that's a real area that we've lacked. We've lacked that kind of penetrative run. And that last goal was just him being in the right place at the right time. So he's doing everything right, and I think he's going to really cause a headache for Klopp going into the Champions League tie. I mean, did they start him? I mean, I personally think you've got to start him.
Have to. Like on that kind of form, you absolutely have to, don't you? And the other person, Jesse, I'm glad to see back is Fabinho in the midfield. I mean, I know he's played 1 or 2 games there now, back in the midfield, but I mean, such a breath of fresh air. Like the centre backs barely had to do anything, and Alisson could have had a feijoada in goals. He could have just sat down and helped himself to a delicious meal.
Shaved. He could just shave if he wants.
Yeah. So that's all down to Fabinho as well. He was a real unsung hero, or maybe a sung hero in certain corners of this game. But good to see him back.
Boys, at the risk of Sal just heading for an early shower, we should probably talk about Arsenal. I've just got a wee stat here. The XG Philosophy tweeted Arsenal's XG was 0.09. Liverpool's was 2.17. So the stats very, very, very conclusive. That you didn't have to watch the game to get this, but having watched the game, they could not hold the ball. Ødegaard was kind of like an example of they needed to get the ball to him to make something happen, but he couldn't even get the ball. Aubameyang, Lacazette, they just weren't in the game. The commentators kept talking about how the centre backs for Arsenal couldn't even get past halfway. And if you watch the highlights, I mean, it's pretty grim for Arsenal fans because
they barely touched the ball.
Well, but when they did touch the ball, pretty much most of the highlights, if you watch them, is just Arsenal losing the ball. And so we know that Liverpool presses, we know that Liverpool puts pressure on teams, but Arsenal losing the ball and conceding goals has been the Achilles heel of their season. Doesn't matter if they're playing Liverpool or Burnley, they just find a way to make a mistake near their box and concede a silly goal. And that's what will piss the Arsenal fans off most, I think, is that, Liverpool played really well, but Liverpool hadn't converted a goal and actually had anything to show for it until after the 60-minute mark. So Arsenal had sort of hung in there all the way to the second half, and then it was just errors. Errors let them down, and Arteta will be really worried about that because they've actually got really good fixtures to finish the season. They're still in the Europa League, but that's not what the kind of form you want to have going into their game midweek.
Yeah, boys. You mentioned about I guess the midfield, and it sounds like they did a really good job of shielding the back four. You had Kabak and Nat Phillips. They've obviously kept a clean sheet as well. Good performance from them, or just didn't really have to do much.
They didn't have to do much.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Boys, much more you've got to say about this one, really, or
I think it's that time of the season where coming off the international break, you don't know what to make. I mean, we've still got games to be played this round, obviously, but you don't know how your team's going to line up. I think it's been a great break for Liverpool. We'll see in the coming weeks how good a break it's been, but I think we really needed to basically, recharge and rethink our strategy. So it's been good for us. But I think the performances so far have been pretty random. And I think now we're going to start to see a really spicy top four race. And that Chelsea result has really opened the door for a lot of teams. Liverpool's one of them, but not just us.
100%. So, Jesse, you're looking at the table now. So Liverpool have jumped up to 5th with that result, and Chelsea obviously dropping points as well. It means that Liverpool are only 2 points behind Chelsea in 5th. However, West Ham, Tottenham, and Everton all have at least one game in hand. So Liverpool. It's good to be. I personally prefer to jump out and get sort of that bit of an early jump on your competitors and be able to sit there for at least 24 hours. But it's going to be interesting. I guess the pressure's really on West Ham, Spurs, and Everton now to be able to get results against their respective or in their respective games in the next couple of days. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this top four race plays out over the next 2 months. Boys, we got plenty of previews though before we wrap out this week's pod though. We'll quickly whip through and I guess if each of you can select a winner and why you think they're going to win. Jesse, the first one up is Southampton are hosting Burnley. Who's your winner in this one and why?
Southampton's been going really all out in the cup competition, and Burnley needs the points. So everything points to Burnley putting in a great performance. I had this done as a 1-0 Southampton still, but I've heard, I think Ward-Prowse is carrying a niggle and might not play, and I'd kind of based that prediction based on Ward-Prowse providing some magic somewhere in the game from a set piece. So it could end up just being a 0-0. So I'm going with 1-0 Southampton, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's just a 0-0 draw. Probably a good point for both teams.
Something that'll blow your minds, I think, a little bit here is Burnley and Southampton are on not only the same points at this stage of the season, but they're also on the same goal difference as well. I think Southampton have scored about 20 more goals, but also conceded 20 more goals than Burnley. So I was not tracking that they were both at sort of the same level at this stage of the season because it feels like Southampton have had a far better season. But
it's incredible, isn't it? Yeah.
Table doesn't lie, does it? Colby, for you, Newcastle are hosting Tottenham Hotspur. Like I said, Spurs have got a chance to jump up to 5th if results go their way. Who are you picking in this one?
Oh, I think this will be a comfortable Spurs victory. Newcastle still haven't arrested the slide, and I think the reverse fixture of this one was a Tottenham blowout as well, if memory serves. I haven't got that in front of me either, but I think Harry Kane and was it?
Yeah, it was a 1-1 draw because it was a 1-1 draw because of that crazy Dyer.
Maybe I should have the stat in front of me next time.
It was Dyer.
Better when you don't.
Dyer got done for that handball. I don't know if you guys remember, but he just sort of got hit at close range. His arm got hit at close range, and they gave the penalty at the end. And Newcastle.
I think Jesse's the right person to be doing these previews because he's so close on all of the stats for FPL this season. So
Newcastle's just been so poor that you could easily just think that they got steamrolled the first time round. I think they probably will get steamrolled as well, mate. I think you're right.
I think Harry Kane and Son are going to fill their boots.
This was the game, gents, where Callum Wilson scored a penalty in the 97th minute for it to be 1-1. And I think you can just imagine Jose would have just been absolutely seething to kind of have been Jose'd. I think Newcastle had 34% of the possession in that game. So, just really got Jose'd. Alrighty, moving on though. Jesse, Aston Villa hosting Fulham. Fulham still within a shout, I guess, of staying up this season, so they've got everything to play for. Whilst Villa, their season really is sort of petering out as they sort of have dropped points recently, which means that it's unlikely for them to make a European spot now. But who's your winner?
I'm backing Fulham. Fulham has really struggled. Fulham have really struggled to score goals. And so it's an unlikely result, but I think Fulham have just got so much to play for. Villa in kind of like, they're in no danger, like literally on the table, but they're in danger of just slipping into a pattern of complacency because they've had all these games in hand. And a few weeks ago, that was kind of like seen as like, this is what's going to give them a realistic chance to be in the same position as where West Ham is. They had all these games in hand and you thought they could actually stay up at that end of the table, but they've kind of slid away with their form. So I just can't see Villa having the same desperation that Fulham will have. And I can kind of see Villa. I mean, it all depends on how Grealish plays because I think he's coming back this week. But I think Fulham to win this 1-0. I think Josh Marja to get the goal.
There you go. You heard it there first, and that I think would bring Christian Fulham up out of the relegation zone possibly if Newcastle lose. Mm-hmm. Colby, Manchester United are hosting Brighton. Manchester United can go 4 points clear of Leicester into second if they get all 3 points here. Brighton still looking over their shoulder at Fulham, who are just 6 points back. Hopefully you can still hear me. Colby, who are you picking for the win here?
I think this is going to be a United victory, Tommy. I think Martial's going to shrug off a bit of frustration. He's going to get a goal in the 61st minute, and then Brighton are going to hit the crossbar a few times, and then Fernandes is going to get an 88th minute penalty to seal it for United and putting the pressure on Brighton in their relegation battle. And that's exactly how this one's going to play out.
Just to clarify, is that Bruno Fernandes penalty going to be before or after on the full-time whistle? Before or after the full-time whistle?
It's going to come in the 88th minutes, actually. So,
okay. Oh man, I kind of agree, but Brighton have been perky recently. I don't know. Maybe Brighton's got a chance here, boys.
If do you guys remember the earlier fixture of this game in the beginning of the season? I think it was like the second round or something like that, where remember Brighton hit the post 5 times and Bruno Fernandes got that penalty after the final whistle. Do you think we're going to see a repeat of that?
Well, that's what we expect to see, and so I think what you've said, Colby, is probably what's going to happen. But Brighton. They've just shown something in the last couple of weeks. I mean, I know Newcastle can play any team into form, but I don't know. Like you can sort of see Trossard popping up and scoring a goal here, and just making United really, really sweat for that equaliser. It could end up being a 1-1 United Brighton. Who knows, boys? I'm backing Brighton here, eh?
Go on,
back them in.
Backing them in.
Alrighty, boys. Jesse, Everton are hosting Crystal Palace. Everton will want to renew their push for the Champions League. Remember, they still have an extra game in hand, whilst Palace can reach the mythical figure of 40 points this week, with 8 games still to be played. Jesse, who are you picking for the win here?
Well, this begins the at the beach phrase. I mean, we're going to hear this countless times for the next few weeks. Crystal Palace, the first to get their rooms reserved and check in at the hotel. They are officially at the beach.
I think they're already there.
They are 100%. They've ordered a margarita and they've got their feet up. So
they wanted to beat the crowds, so they got in early.
Bit of public transport chat. They've beaten the rush hour. But
boys, what do
you reckon Hodgson's ordering from the bar?
Sex on the beach.
Ask the same question.
It's definitely sex on the beach. Dirty old boy. I've got Everton winning 2-1. But boys, just take that with a grain of salt, because Everton find a way to shit themselves at home. So don't be surprised if Zaha just spoils the party.
100% would not be surprised if, even with Crystal Palace at the beach, Everton find a way to lose or draw this game. Wolves host West Ham in the final match of the round. Colby, Wolves season likewise is almost done. They're 5 points short of the mythical 40-point mark. However, West Ham still have it all to play for. They can jump back into the top 4 and finish the round in the top 4 after Chelsea's loss if they manage to get all 3 points here. Colby, what are you predicting?
I'm predicting a West Ham win, Tommy. Wolves been a bit patchy. I think West Ham, like you were sort of alluding to, they've got a little bit more to play for. With this these European spots dangling still tantalisingly close for them. I think West Ham will continue to push at least, and will get the result against Wolves. I'm going to say 2-1.
I think without Raul Jimenez, Wolves still are pretty much a lower mid-table team, and I think they're going to struggle still without Jimenez back in the team. Although I think
he's close to a return.
Yeah, and it's sort of a little bit hard to tell like how long it's going to take before he's back in the matchday squad, because I mean we don't really see many skull fractures in the Premier League, so it's a little bit hard to get an idea of how long it's going to take before he starts training and how big the gap is between resuming training and actually being in the matchday squad. But anyway, exciting times I guess ahead for West Ham fans potentially, or also potential of time to be disappointed too. Before we finish up though, we've got another More Than a Game Fantasy Premier League prize to give away, because March has finished. So Ash, excuse pronunciation, Ash Parajulis, Los Montañeros, take out the March prize. Finally, we've got an outright winner who was a paid entrant, so congrats Ash. Overall, Raul X Greenwood has developed a 25-point lead over Eric Lawrence's Red or Dead, while Jesse Farmer is still third overall, just 1 point behind Eric.
Hanging in there.
Overall, Jesse is way out ahead of all of the other More Than a Game hosts, whilst I'm in second. I think I'm in like 35th overall. But Scott Johnson's in third. Colby is then in fourth, followed by George. Last week's guest, Mikey, Killian, and Damo round out the host places. So good luck to everyone who's still playing. I've got to admit, I had 2 transfers in the bank for this game week, and I completely forgot about it. So, FPL, love it. Colby, how are you going how are you enjoying your debut FPL season?
Oh, this is my second season. It might seem like it's my debut season in so far as I'm a bit shit.
Yeah. You're playing like a noob, so
I'm pretty sure I won the monthly award out of all of the MTAG hosts this month. I think I'm the highest placed this month.
Looks like somebody's done a bit of digging.
Late surge.
I love that you. It sounds like you definitely checked, mate. Look, congrats to you, Colby.
Maybe. I haven't got it up in front of me right now, so.
Yeah, and I haven't checked, so I can't prove or disprove it either. So, mate, I'll give you this one. All right. That wraps up this week's pod, though. Thanks very much for everyone for tuning in. I know, Sal, you have definitely been amused by my internet shitting itself throughout this pod. You mentioned that my lips were still moving, but there was no sound coming out. It was a bit like an old kung fu movie which had been dubbed. So hopefully we're still able to make a good podcast out of this for all
listeners. Can tune into this on YouTube anytime, Tommie. They want. They can just come and lap up the glory that is our live recordings.
Amazingly, the pod actually never cut out. It was just meant that there were whole periods where everything was real jerky, and then it would all just catch up in like the space of half a second. And I was like, "Yep, all right, cool. I'm back live with everyone."
The pod's got more jerky than a truck stop, eh?
Yeah. So you're looking a little bit like one of the characters off the Thunderbirds there, Tommie, for a while.
Oh dear. Well, look, that is just, I guess, the magic of live TV and live podcasting, really, isn't it? But thanks everyone for joining in. Fantastic to have you on the pod again, as always, Colby. You and I at the same time together. Jesse, great to be spend some more time with you too. So until next time, ladies and gents, enjoy the football.